Hi, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of OnCoffee, a podcast where we sit down with young oncologists and explore their journeys, challenges, and the passion that shaped their careers. I'm your host, Vahe Grigoryan. I'm so excited to have Dr. Daniel Portik, a radiation oncologist at Maastro, with us today. Dr. Portik, it's great to have you here.
Hi. Hi. I'm very happy to be invited, and I didn't know I'm the first one, so it's good. Like I said during the break, you're basically pioneering, so I'm happy to break the ice. Yeah.
I hope we're going to have a great discussion today. Before we dive into oncology, let's talk about coffee. Since you are on OnCoffee, it only feels right to ask, what is your go-to coffee order when you need that energy boost for a busy day?
So actually, that's a very complicated question for me because I drink several types of coffee. So I both like the strong short ones, like our southern friends like to drink. So very strong espresso. But I also just like simple filtered coffee, like I'm having today, and I do vary it during the day. So yeah, and once in a while I even drink a what you call the stronger mocha, the one that you have to put on and it gives a nice smell. So I am a big coffee drinker. I have to admit, I'm trying to not to drink so much in the afternoon because then it can disrupt my sleep. Yeah.
Yeah. So today I'm also drinking coffee. It's latte, but when I need energy, I take one or two espresso shots. So it gives me energy. Okay. Speaking of coffee, here's a fun fact. Did you know that coffee is the second most traded commodity in the world, just after the crude oil? It's incredible how something so simple like a cup of coffee can have such a big impact globally. And much like coffee, which fuels so many of us during our busy day, I'm sure the international societies you mentioned earlier will really energize young professionals in the same way, connecting people and helping to drive progress in the medical field. It's a global community, much like the world of coffee. I'd love to hear more about why you think this is such an important topic and how these societies can really impact the careers of young oncologists.
Yeah. So actually, I was thinking on the way here when I was coming, I knew that okay, this will be the topic of our talk, and I realized over the weekend, even not just on the way here, that in a way I am the result of these international societies. Quite early on, I was exposed to going on exchanges. So in my university years, I tried to go on as many as possible. I went with Erasmus for one semester to Budapest. I enjoyed you probably know the IFMSA, is the International Federation of Medical Students Association. It's a mouthful. I went through their programs twice, once to Indonesia, once to Sweden. And so I was several times in Hungary because I'm from Romania, but I'm also Hungarian. And and those always impacted me because basically in my last year in med school in Sweden, I was exposed to radiation oncology. So that kind of put the bug in my head that hey, this is a nice field. It's a Can it be done in my home country? What's the level of it? And then when I got into my training, I saw that there's really thriving European community who are writing guidelines, who are writing practices. And then I got attached to the European Society of Radiation Oncology, and I went to their courses. I even was on a course from them last week. Then I got involved with their young members. So it's really, I realized over the course that they impacted me. So I'm very happy to talk about this because I do believe it's a very important topic. I also notice in different countries the attitude of, let's say, the local departments vary. Some training departments are very open to it. Oh yeah, go sign up, go to congresses, go to fellowships. We might give you trainings, a budget to go on trainings. While others are so much like, yeah, but we have our local guidelines. Do you really have to go there? Why? So it varies a lot, and it can in the same country it can vary a lot. So I find it very interesting how these things can impact young professionals' lives. I know it impacted mine. So yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. The international societies and the congresses, or I don't know, any course outside of your country can really help you throughout your career. It helps you to make connections, which I think is the most important part of making a good career. So I think the societies are very important. And by the way, I'm also going to participate in IFMSA this year in Czech Republic.
Very good.
It's going to be great. I'm going to be in oncology department, and I hope I'll learn new things there.
Wow.
Yeah,
Congrats.
thanks. So, for someone who's just starting their career, it can feel overwhelming to join these societies or conferences or congresses. Do you have any tips on how to navigate those early steps or get the most out of this experience?
So I remember going through different phases when you first start joining these things. First, you going to do these events, and you might feel a bit of anxiety. No, I don't know if the best word is anxiety, but you might feel a bit overwhelmed by so many things going on. They are these very fancy words. They are work groups. They are task forces. There are committees. It's quite big, and I assume this is the same for everything, for ESMO, Estro. It's all of these acronyms. I do think that at first, like, try to find a few subjects that you would really like, or you feel you can, let's say, go into deeply. You know, I do feel that congresses are very important for networking and to meeting people, but also go for specific courses, because at a congress, somebody presents maybe their last 5 years, 10 years of work in 12 minutes, 50 minutes. If you go to a dedicated course that's over 2 or 3 days, you can see like really developed ideas. You go home with much more take home messages. So it's a bit different. I would say try to taste both. At the congresses, what worked for me is that go to the young corner. There's always a young track, a young corner, a young meetup, because there you will find very like-minded people. And I remember at the first year I went, we were a bunch of these people who were okay. We don't know each other. What are we doing here? You're okay. Should I start the discussion? Or like usually people are a bit ashamed to spark up a discussion, and but you have to get over that. And after that, you see that you meet wonderful people, and sometimes these organizations, they have specific programs for this. So for example, at Astro, during the young track, we have something called like a speed dating, where you talk with somebody for 6 minutes, then you switch, then you switch again. So it's we do try to make this much more easier to break down this barrier. And mostly people, especially at the beginning of their career, they're very reluctant to spark up a discussion, to go to somebody very, let's say, highly appreciated in their field, and to start talking with them. But mostly people are very welcoming, and they're very friendly there. Yeah.
Yeah, yep. That's so true. Most of the young oncologists and not oncologists, medical students, think they will fail when they try something. But if they didn't try, they wouldn't know would they fail or would they succeed. So they have to try everything. Yeah.
And I also noticed that also people differs so much, because I honestly have to say that some of the best conversations I had were just colleagues from different countries in the same positions as me, and we're just talking about life. And sometimes at these congresses, you also meet people who are really like gunning. They really want to like pitch your idea to you. They really want to present this, which I do believe when people meet at these conferences, some people, it's very nice to just talk with them about what's going on with their lives. How is the training in their own country? Because this impacts you a lot. Like some people have to have a national board exam, while some people have to finish a training and present a research paper. It differs very wildly. And some people really want to pitch an idea, pitch a specific topic for you, because maybe they have to meet a deadline. And what some of the best connections I had were usually just like real life discussions, people talking about, okay, what happened in their own country. And for example, Corona was a big topic opener because everybody was at the conference and everybody could talk, okay, what did happen in your country? Was your country fully open? Was it closed? Did you have some special things you had to do? So it was a really good icebreaker. So one of the few positives that came out of COVID, right? And some people tell you, okay, prepare your 5-minute pitch, but sometimes that can feel a bit, let's say, artificial, So it's, I would say, always be true to yourself. Okay, if you're a bit of a more shy person, seek out the other shy person at that event and talk to them. And two shy people are talking, and maybe that will work for you. And I do feel that these connections, for example, led me to some very good collaborations. We had colleagues who I met at the Young track at Estro, just a short meet and greet. Like I said, later on, we invited that person from Italy to give a presentation in Romania at the Romania Young Oncologist Society, and then others invited us back. So it's a lot of back and forth going, and I also feel that at the European level, it is felt that this is very important and is needed, and we see several of these societies creating these, I don't want to say platforms, but these environments, so where young people can talk and can share ideas, or mentoring programs. Yeah, I was also involved with the mentoring program. So yeah.
So our suggestion to young professionals is to go there and to just talk. Find someone and talk. Maybe this will impact your career in a good way.
Yes, and at the beginning, maybe you get invitations to talk, to give a speech, and I know that some people, when they get these invitations, first they say, "Oh, but really me? I'm not such a professional. I'm not. Should I really give the talk?" And maybe you feel that way, and maybe sometimes it's true, but also try to break down this. So say yes and try to get over this fear. And for example, at Estro, we have a very thriving young community, and when we are developing the Congress, I was involved in this year's Congress's organization, and we get a list of hey, these are the sessions, you can nominate young people to be chairs, and we really try to nominate young professionals to be co-chairs. And for some people, that's it's a really big deal if somebody's, for example, at a presentation and they are co-chairing, they're at an abstract session and they are co-chairing. So it really matters a lot, and it breaks down those people. And by the way, through these events, people are being, let's say, you identify people who are very active. So you identify people who are very, very active, and then you can promote them in your organization. So this is, I think, is very valuable, because this way you get a new influx of active people. Because probably you also encounter this in most of these associations. Let's be honest, if you have 10 people, 2 are very active, 2 or 3 contribute, and the rest, they're not as active, but there's always that like sort of like a Pareto distribution, the 80-20%, but there's always those few drivers, and this way I think you can identify these new people who push the field. And at first, some of these talks, they might not seem very scientific for some people, but for example, we with the young committee at Young Astro, we had, for example, publications on burnout, publications on the mentoring program, and not everybody sees these as very valuable. You haven't increased the PFS with 10% or but these are, by the way, these are very important, because how the young professionals perceive a field, it will impact how many people you recruit. And now we're also having a task force on retention and recruit for the young radiation oncologists, because this can be a problem. Yeah.
So you are a fellow at ERCC. Could you please share your experience there?
Yeah. I finished my training as a radiation oncologist in 2019. Then I worked as a consultant for about 2.5 years. And at this time, I was also getting involved with ESTRO, the European Radiation Oncology Society. And I was in the mentoring program, and I had a very good mentor, Marian Asnar, and she was constantly telling me, you should get involved with the European community. You should get involved in research. And she was constantly, she wasn't pushing me, but she was just like, like in the cartoons, this like small little character on your shoulder, like, you should pay attention to this. This is important. And then at one moment, okay, I said, okay, I'm gonna try to go on an exchange, on a fellowship, or observerships. You have many of these things. And then she recommended me this fellowship at the ERTC, which stands for the European Organization of Research and Treatment of Cancer. And they have a RTQA fellowship, which is very specific for radiation oncologist, which stands for radiotherapy quality assurance. So basically, we make sure that the quality of the radiotherapy that is being administered is of a high quality and does not impact the result of the trial. So, for example, just to give you a fast example, what if you are testing a new drug in a clinical setting? For example, let's say rectal cancer. We know that we have their systemic therapy, we have surgery, we also have radiation there in the sequence. But what if you are administering a new drug, but you're also administering radiation, but maybe the radiation is not done at a good enough quality, and that impacts your new drug? Like, nobody wants that. Nobody wants another treatment to impact the new experimental treatment. So the fellowship is about projects related to this. We work a lot with radiotherapy data from our trials, because ERTC is basically a organization that runs trials, and this is let's say the main topic, the main job of the ERTC, to make sure that trials are run well and we produce high quality data. Now, at the radiotherapy quality assurance team, we have access to the data that the sites send in. So we have the CT scans, we have access to the radiotherapy plans, and we take a look at those plans, and sometimes we generate secondary analysis, and we work on that. It's a very interesting experience. I will actually have to give a talk on this at the end of this month, and like a testimonial, so it's fresh to me, the topic. Coming from the hospital environment, first it seems like a bit of a corporate light approach, which in most hospital settings you are used to working with let's say head of department and the head of some teams, but it's a much smaller institution. While when you're in a research organization with 230 people, you have a much more corporate structure, and it takes some time to understand exactly what are you doing, what do you have access to, what can you get. So that takes usually, I would say, like 3 to 6 months, and then you also get some projects. You get attached to some projects. You can also develop some of your own projects, and you work on those, and you try to publish those, to present them at a for example, at Astro, at ESMO. And I have to say, the fellowship community now, the fellows community is quite active now, because we don't just have medical fellows. We have quality of life fellows, we have statistics fellows, and it's a nice environment. It's a very international environment. All the work is done in English, so we all communicate and speak in English, even though we all live in Belgium. And for me, it was definitely very impactful. So I was here for about almost 3 years, 2.5 years, yes, as a fellow at the ERTC. By the way, these fellowships are funded sometimes by various organizations. So I have to give a big thanks to the Kom op tegen kanker, which stands for is the Flemish Cancer Society. It means Stand Up for Cancer. They have been funding this fellowship for several years, I believe over 20 years. They have been funding this fellowship as a recurring funding. So basically, this is also a big positive change, I would say, because you don't have to think about finding funding, because some of your listeners will know, that can really be a big problem sometimes.
Yeah, finding a funding, it's a really big problem, especially for those students or young professionals who are from LMICs, low and middle income countries, it can be really difficult. Speaking of Astro, are there any upcoming events or I don't know, conferences, congresses, courses?
Yeah, so the biggest conference related to Astro, to the Radiation Oncology Society, takes place in May usually. This year it's in Vienna. I believe you can still sign up. I'm not sure. If, I'm not sure it would still be eligible for the early bird, but definitely try to go to that. I do think that all young radiation oncologists, which can mean, by the way, radiation oncologists, clinical oncologists, it can mean technicians, RTTs, it can be medical physicists. We all work with these people in the radiation oncology field. I believe they should experience it at least once. And we also have at the Congress, we have a dedicated day specifically for the young professionals. This is called the Young Track. It's always on Monday. So the Congress usually starts on Friday. We have a day zero with like some pre-meeting courses, but then you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and it closes on Tuesday. And Monday we have one track just for the young professionals, and we develop a program. We always listen to what the young professionals say the previous year and try to implement them. So, for example, this year we have a program that we have several important topics. For example, how to critically read and assess a paper. We have a presentation about imposter syndrome. We also have a presentation about investing in the young generation to the next upcoming generation. So it's really we try to make something that let's say checks some of the needs of the young professionals. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Our listeners can mark their calendars for Astra conference and come to Vienna. I'm sure that would be a great experience for them. So let's just move from oncology to other things. Daniel, you know 5 languages. Um, I'm currently learning German. It's my fourth language, but it's a really big trouble. So I want to ask how you managed to learn 5 languages.
Well, some of it is, let's say, by just the way I grew up, and some of it has been due to me moving or going to new places. So I'm from Romania, so I speak Romanian. I'm also a Hungarian, so in school we did a bilingual school, so I also did Hungarian. Then in Romania, quite early on, we start learning English, and I believe in the second or the third grade, my parents went a bit the next step, and they hired for me a private tutor just to advance my English even more. So this was from my parents, due to which quite early on I did my Cambridge exam in my 10th grade in high school. Now, due to Romania and some historical things, we also study a second foreign language. So usually Hungarians, they choose German, and the Romanians, they choose French. So I choose German. I studied a bit of German. I can't say that I speak it. I forgot a lot. So that was German. Then when I moved to Belgium, I started, I said, okay, I want to get immersed in the local culture. So because I speak Romanian, I might as well start with French. So I started with French, and since then, almost every Tuesday, I've been having a language course of some sorts. We even with the fellows, by the way, we found a school to come here at the office, and we were doing a French course with them. So with French, I got all the way. I believe it was like the start of B1. So B1 is like the starting of being fluent, but Romanian helps me a lot. And now, because of my work, because I'm transitioning back to a clinical role, and in the Netherlands at Maastro in Maastricht, there I have to speak Dutch. So now I'm also doing twice a week Dutch courses. So at this point, it's a bit of a hobby of mine to try to learn languages. There are multiple stages. We can also talk about that. It's I believe at first you have to get get some of the basics down, and then you have to just get exposure. So if you're gonna go next year to the Czech Republic and you can speak German there, that I think will boost your German a lot. Maybe you also pick up some local Czech. It's totally possible.
I'm also gonna have a program in Germany. Actually, I think that's helped me a lot because I know the grammar, but when it comes to speaking, I'm not that good because there's no one to talk with. Only my tutor, and I met her only twice in a week for 1 hour. So it's not that much, and I need people to talk with.
There are multiple tricks which I could say that after you get some of the basics, like after, let's say, you finish an A1 or an A2, you feel free to for example, listen music in that language. So music is usually very intrinsic to us. It's very easy to learn with it. Watch some shows. Watch some shows in that language. At first, it's going to be very difficult. First, you'll watch it with subtitles. Then try to watch it with the subtitles in that language. So that's the next step. Listen to the news. So I'm doing that. For example, the Dutch have a very interesting approach that they have the news that's shown on the TV, and then they have a makkelijke taal, which is like the simple version. So it's for people learning the language or having learning difficulties, and you hear the same news. And I find it very nice to hear it. The big news in the world, you hear it usually anyway. So when you hear it again in the language you are studying, I think it's very useful. The other thing I just remember now, read comic books. So I heard they do this a lot in Belgium. Belgium is very famous for the comic book industry. They use it to teach the language to children. And actually, it's a very good tip. I use this with French. Just buy a few comics and find something you like. I don't know, fantasy, sci-fi, whatever. And you can just read that in the language you are studying. And it will also expose you to a more everyday language, because sometimes in these classes we learn a very high, like hohe Deutsch, as in German they would say, like the very pure Dutch, and not the one that is spoken on the streets in everyday life.
Yeah, thank you for the tips. Actually, I'm using some of them. I'm currently trying to learn the songs of Rammstein by heart.
Good.
It's not good for my ears, but the language is good. So I think there is no need to tell our young listeners that learning a new language can help you throughout your career, especially English. And if you're not from an English-speaking country, you have to learn English because it's going to open a lot of opportunities in your way. In the way of your career. The languages are not only good for connections and making networks, but they are also good for our brain. For instance, did you know that when you think in a foreign language, you're more likely to make rational decisions rather than emotional ones? This phenomenon is called the foreign language effect, and they did an experiment. It's called trolley problem. When you must choose whether to pull a lever to save 5 people or sacrifice one. When participants were asked this in their native language, they couldn't answer the question because of the emotions. But when they were asked the same question in a foreign language, they usually made a rational decision to save 5s and sacrifice 1. So languages are not only for making friends, creating a network, but also for our logical thinking.
I have a favorite question when I speak with people about languages and they say they speak multiple languages. And for some people, for example, Eve, so I have a favorite question that I like to ask people when talking about languages, especially people who speak multiple languages. I like to ask them, in which language do you count? Because to me, counting is so intrinsic to your mother tongue that so even speaking multiple languages, when I have to like really count fast in a certain situation, I do revert to my mother tongue, which I find very, very fascinating, because you can, I don't know, maybe you'll, like you said, you also go on exchange in Germany, you get a dog and you start speaking German to the dog. But I find this very interesting to ask people, okay, which language do you count in? And sometimes you get very interesting results, especially people who've been exposed since childhood to multiple languages.
Yeah, my German tutor also says when you start to count in German, then that's the moment you know that you know the language.
Another interesting thing that when I was when I was small, I in my childhood, I suffered a bit from what you would call stuttering. You know, in the same language when you want to say something and you get blocked. And I read about it lately that some actors who had this, when they had to do an accent, they lost their stuttering, which I find really interesting because I do stutter less in English than in my mother tongue. It's very interesting. Maybe some of your listeners who are more versed in this topic, they will be able to explain to us why. But it's very. I do believe it's very important, and learning English, I believe, like you said before, it helps you so much. And just imagine, like, you go to a congress like this, almost any congress you go to, they will speak English. Like the presentations will be in English, and you hear multiple people from multiple countries, and it's not a big deal, honestly, if you don't speak extremely well. Like people usually get a bit conflicted. Oh, but my language skills are not so good. But that should honestly, it shouldn't really matter because everybody has accents. I have accent, you have accent, French accent, Italian accent, Spanish accent. I believe if you say things correctly, even if you maybe sound a bit differently, it's not a big deal. You know, like as long as you don't confuse, for example, side effects in 80 versus 18%, that's important. This happened to me once at one conference. So I said, okay, that was not clear to that speaker, but and it really is one of the biggest things that can happen. I mean, if you listen to the talk of the CEO from Duolingo, if I remember correctly, his talk, he said that they wanted to make an app that helps people with their career. And they thought, okay, what could we teach them? Could we teach them music, math? And when they looked at the data, they said the skill that's linked, correlated more towards advancing their career is language skills. And basically, that's the story he tells, that's why they decided to create the app for language learning, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting indeed. You also love to read. I'm also a book lover, and I wanted to ask you, what are your favorite books or a book that's impacted on you?
Ooh, that's a really big question. I am a big fantasy and sci-fi reader, so every year I try to read like a saga of books. So last year I was really into the Expanse saga. You also have this series. The year before I read the Witcher saga. But the book that impacted me the most, let me think about it. Ah, yes, it's one of my favorite books. It's called An Astronaut's Life to Guide on Earth. No, yes, An Astronaut's Life to Life on Earth. No, sorry, what did I say? No, An Astronaut's Guide to Life on Earth. Yes, it's written by a Canadian astronaut who was this was his career, and he also was on the International Space Station. And what I like is that now we have many of these self-help books. Like every year you have one of these big self-help books that will, you promise they will change your life and such. But this, it doesn't really start out as one of these books. It's not written as a self-help book, but he just gives examples of things he learned, of things he learned during his career, because he started as a military pilot, as most astronauts do, and then he became an astronaut. So, for example, one of my favorite chapters was, he says, "Be a zero." And at first, okay, what does this mean? Like, be a zero? Everybody's just, you hear things about, no, you want to be the one who pushes things. You want to prove. And he said, actually, in that very high risk environment, when you go somewhere new, be a zero, you have to just suck up as much information as you can. Like, you won't, it's very hard in the first few months to come up with something extremely new. that will improve things. Most likely, you have to sit in and learn and implement the stuff that is being taught to you, and then later on, you can really be you can start being the type of person who changes things. So, I really thought that was a very very good topic, because most of the time, people, when they, you're like a young professional, you join a place, and sometimes it's like people think, okay, I'm gonna change everything now. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come up with ideas, and sometimes that takes time. Sometimes that takes time. So sometimes a place where you are. It should be really okay to say, okay, This is a lot. It's overwhelming. I have to take all this information in. So that's definitely, and it's the book that I've given most to other people, and now they're given it back. So the book at this moment, it has so many underlined things and notes in it, and stickers. It's really, I believe, one of the best books that I read, and it's like a recollection of stories from an astronaut, but it's not a self-help book, but it is in a way. So yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna add it to my book
and
list.
it's short, so
Yeah,
it's not really, it's not just like, it's I think it's 200 pages max, so it's not 300, 400. It's not something like this, like a big Stephen King novel, it's.
yeah. I'm gonna add to my book list, and hopefully read it in the near future. I have the problem. I'm buying the books and don't reading them, so it's a big problem. I have to give some time to reading.
I've just I've just started a new habit, which some people call cheating, some people know. When I'm reading a book, and we have less and less time to read, I also listen to the audiobook of it. So I finish a chapter, and let's say the next chapter while you're driving, while you're doing your groceries or stuff like that, and you can advance faster. It's Some people say no, that's not allowed. It's you are ashamed to the book reading gods, while some people say nope, you're progressing, it's good, it's a good thing to do. So, but I am enjoying it, I do have to say.
Yeah, I'm also not used to audiobooks, but I think I'll try to listen them because the most of the time when you're driving or in a way or work or your university, it takes so much time. You can do something good in that time. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your favorite book. Daniel, you're about to become a father. Congratulations. That is such an exciting milestone. How you are feeling about this change, and how you will manage to do your fatherhood with your work?
Yeah, so that's basically, we could have a separate podcast on that. But when I said that the fellowship I did at the RTC really changed my life, I really meant it, both professionally and personally. So here in Belgium, I've met my wife, and now we're expecting a small little daughter, and we're in full preparations to for her arrival. Hopefully, we will manage. How we are gonna mix, let's say, um it is good if you live in a country that has some father leave, so some paternity leave. I'm very thankful that my work environment and my colleagues, we have a very young team, so several people have children, and it when I told them, it was very natural. They also went through this, and I this is quite a comforting feeling. And we talked about, okay, when could I go on paternity leave? I also would like to be a bit participative. I don't want to be an absent type of dad. And I believe most of the young generation wants to be like that. You do see a big difference. Like in everything, you have to prepare. So we did some preparation courses on like from childcare to pregnancy to everything, and it's fun. Sometimes you think you know things because you learn them in med school, but also it's also, like, if you're in a completely different field, like I'm in the field of oncology, so it's like almost Chinese to me, and you're just more familiar with some terms, but it will also be an interesting journey, when you go through something like that, and you also understand the medical background behind a bit, but now you're living it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I hope you're gonna succeed. I hope you're gonna do it well.
Survive.
Yeah, I don't have kids, but I think it's very important to be by your side of your kid when they grow, not just physically but emotionally, especially for girls because they are uh, really good with their fathers, and that's very important to be the side of your kid. I hope you're gonna do it well. And a fun fact about you is that you love to give Google reviews. Is there any interesting review that you want to share with us?
So this became a hobby of mine, and I find it very funny that people ask me about this because I once I even wrote it in my CV that it's like a hobby of mine. So and I got asked about this a lot. So because of my travels, I got a lot of these notifications like, okay, do you want to give a review to a place? And I started doing it, and then I can be a bit competitive, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I really became competitive, and I really started doing it, and so when I go to a place like a restaurant or a pub, like a few days after, I get this notification from Google. Okay, how was the place? Do you feel it's a nice place? Would you recommend it to other people? Okay, most people just most thing people look at are just the stars, and usually you take a picture of your food or of your drink. But then when you become, let's say, more active with the Google reviewer, you start taking awkward pictures. So, for example, you take a picture of the entrance, you take a picture of the stairs, you take a picture of the menu, and not everybody understands that, but you see that people really need those things, and you sometimes need those pictures and you don't know. So you feel a bit, I'm doing a bit of a community service here by writing, is this place good or not? It's very interesting because as you start getting more and more views, then your reviews are actually the owners react to what you write. So if you write, oh, I had a really good time, the owner will write back to you, oh yes, we will welcome you back. And a few times when I really had a bad experience, the owners actually wrote back, okay, we've discussed this internally, thank you for pointing this out. And I also feel that people have a bit of a bias. Usually we only talk about places we didn't like. They say, okay, do not go there, I don't know, the service was bad, the communication was bad, but and we don't really say when places do a good job, like, oh, they were somebody in the group had some special needs, like for example dietary, and they really respected it. Like so many times people have told me like they are allergic to some things, and they went to a place, they said this and they completely forgot about it. So I do have to say that I believe we should also good reviews to places. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important thing for the community. I'm really thankful for all of those reviewers because if without them, it would be very difficult to choose a destination or just a cafe or restaurant. Or
And you discover things like you have never thought about. So for example, until now, I have to admit I didn't think about if to a certain place, can I go with my children or not,
yeah,
or do they have chairs for children, or the same thing with people who have pets. Because you're not in that situation, you don't think of that situation, so you're not paying attention, and then you start noticing things that, oh, that place has a small bowl for dogs and cats. Oh, I didn't think about that.
um,
So I think it's the effect that you try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and that helps you, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, that's great. Thank you, Daniel, for being so good person for the community. Daniel, this was a really interesting and great conversation. Before we wrap up, do you have any advice for our young professionals in the medical field, especially those just starting their career in oncology?
I would definitely say get involved in these communities, even though at first they feel very distant or very far. How could I get involved in that? And why would I do that? I believe try to get involved. I know it impacted me hugely. Like I said, professionally and personally, I would not be here if these things wouldn't have happened. Get involved with your local societies, with your national societies. We also have a very national society in my home country. And even though it feels like you don't always see the benefit you would get, just keep doing it, keep at it. Sometimes it takes time, and you never know where a a recommendation for a event, a workshop comes from. It's really, there are so many opportunities out there, and people do not know about them, or they found out too late. You don't want to be in the situation. Oh, I the application was last week and I didn't know about it. Oh, darn it. Like, try to get in touch. We have so much possibilities now to hear the news and everything. We give so much of our attention to other things. We might as well give our attention to these things.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for your kind words, Daniel, and thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and I'm sure our listeners have learned a lot from your experience and insights. Best of luck with fatherhood, and I look forward seeing all the amazing things you'll continue to do in your career. Thank you a lot, and thanks again to all our listeners. Stay tuned for more stories and conversation from the front line of oncology. Until next time, keep the coffee brewing. Thank you, Daniel.
Goodbye. Thank you very much.